Kevin Robbins of his position as council member place 2?
It appears that Kevin has just quit and stopped coming to the meetings. And in accordance with the charter, he has forfeited his position after missing 3 meetings in a row without any attempt to let us know whether he was coming or not coming. And it's not an action item, it's just, as the charter says, the council member shall forfeit his position. There is some action that we need to take as far as appointing somebody to his position. If we want to do that before the election, and if we want to do that, then we need to put that on as an agenda item, I guess, for the next meeting. But by the time we get to the next meeting, we're within 30 days of the election, so I don't know whether we want to do that or not. It says the board shall appoint somebody in the interim. We'll put that one on for the next meeting, and we'll talk about that.
Mr. Gray, I communicated with you and via email with regard to this being excused. Correct. And like I indicated, we haven't really had, I don't think the council has had an opportunity to deliberate on whether he's excused or not.
Oh, we look back over the past years, as long as Kim's been here and as long as I've been here, we have had one instance where one person was in a similar situation and their absences were work-related, and they did request that we excuse them after the fact. We have not received a request from Kevin to do that. So at this point, I mean, y'all can do, the council can move in the direction that it wants to move, but at this point, there has been no request.
Have we contacted him and trying to figure out?
He visited with Kim after the first meeting that he missed, and I saw him in our office again after the second meeting. He has not given us any indication that he wants to come back. He did mention to a different set of employees other than those of us in the city manager's office that he wasn't coming back again.
Okay, well, I guess my contention and what I'm going to maintain is that it says here without being excused by the city council. Well, I would think that, to me, in my mind, that says we, as a council, either need to make a determination as to whether he's excused or not. Because what does that mean if Oscar's out, or if I'm out, or if the mayor's out? Is that excused or unexcused?
Previously, we've accepted excuses if council members let us know that they're going to be out for work or other issues.
So who's accepting those excuses? The council or
the city manager's office tracks those. We track whether we've been notified or not, and if we're notified, then we're notified, and we haven't had anyone else go 3 meetings consecutively without calling.
You've missed a meeting, or Oscar's missed a meeting, or anybody's missed a meeting, I always ask if we've had a call to let us know if you're coming. And if you call and you said I'm coming, or if you called and you said I can't make it, that's an excuse.
Well, and I understand what you're saying, but so let's take me for instance. I was not at the last meeting. So what this says is without being excused by the city council. So did the city council excuse me or not?
Oh, we have not, in the years that I've been city manager, we have not excused every council member when they miss a meeting. The only time this ever comes into play is if you have 3 consecutive meetings, and we haven't really had that one other time.
Let me ask one other thing then. So whenever you contacted the council member, did you say that he did or did not say what his reason for being absent?
He did not.
And he was specifically asked that?
No. I did not.
I did not specifically ask him. I told him we missed him the other night at the meeting. He turned and walked out of the room.
Well, I mean, I think if we want to proceed with this, we can consider it, and I think that but in my opinion, it takes council action to either designate them excused or unexcused, because it says very clearly here, without being excused by the city council. It doesn't say by the city manager, it doesn't say by a council member, it says by the city council. So if the city council has not made a determination as to whether his absences are excused or not, then I don't think that we can move forward with anything. We need to make that determination. Now, we could have an agenda item on the next council meeting. Since this unfortunately is just discussion, we can't take any action.
That's correct.
We could have an agenda item on the next council meeting that simply contemplates whether or not this council, in accordance with the charter, wants to excuse his absences. And if we decide, no, we're not going to excuse them, then okay, this is on us. That's my recommendation.
I don't agree. I think the charter is pretty clear. In fact, it's as clear as you can possibly get. It says shall forfeit. And you're a big person on shall. Yes, Steve.
I agree with that. The city manager, how many meetings do we have left on this time?
3 after tonight,
We have 3 meetings left.
actually 2.5 after tonight.
When I first learned of this, you will recollect it. I came to you with some questions about this very item. This is a serious issue, rightfully or wrongfully, that if a member doesn't just elect not to show. I understand the charter, and I have said many times I am certainly a supporter of the charter. I do agree that it would take council action to formally. I believe council can weigh in on this, to be quite frank. One of the questions I did ask well in advance, when I heard this was happening, the agenda had not even been written yet, correct? I walked into your office, and one of the questions I asked, just out of decorum, what have you, I asked the exact same question that Councilman Pierce asked. Have we specifically asked Councilmember Robbins of his intent? I have indicated more than once, as recent as this morning, I believe I talked about this, and I've been very consistent. I said, you know, whether it be me, no matter who, let's take the name out of it, so that the council has the full story. Have we made an attempt to specifically, and I'm going to use the same words, even though Councilmember Paul and I have not talked about this, but is his specific intent to totally disregard his responsibilities as an elected official to come to the council meeting? Now, it may or may not be. And it says, unless excused. Now, I have a hard time excusing 3 blatant, just I'm not coming to council. And that may well be. But I have no evidence of that. One of the things I'm going to do is to, and I also believe it would take, I know it says shall, but there's a lot of items in the charter that says shall and will, but we still have to take action on it. We always take action on it. Is that not basically correct? Is that not basically correct with the overall, that we do take action on many areas of the charter, but we still can't take action? Is that not correct, sir?
Steve, we're going both ways with it, yes.
And that's exactly my point. A little bit of consistency. You know, I don't want to be known as, okay, let's do it this way because of this situation. We either do it this way or we do it that way. And I think, you know, I'm really torn on this one. Yes, the charter says shall, but there's that phrase that says unless excused. And there's a word not in there. It doesn't say whether you can retro. You know, I have a hard time accepting doing something in retro. But we've got, I don't know, I've got a little problem with this because nobody can look me in the eye and say, we made. The fact he walked in, when he walked into the office, was that as a result of somebody asking him to come down and talk about the subject? I believe he was here for a totally unrelated thing.
He did something at the front desk, and I said hi to him. He said hi back. I said, we missed you the other night. He turned and he walked out.
And I appreciate that. But that's the problem I have. You know, we've got to become a little more formalized. As you're going to hear me talking extensive about it on another particular agenda item today. I would like to table this. I still think there would have to be. I don't know how we can table something and there's no action. I guess I don't know if we can. We can't table something and there's no action. And I know, I suspect that we will be told that, well, we Yeah, it says shall, therefore you shall, he shall. But I would think that this council would have a little some latitude on this.
I address that to some
Let me say
extent.
one more thing.
Yes.
Now it's 4. He didn't show up tonight. He didn't say a word. Actually, it's 5 because we came out of executive session and he left that night without a word. He just walked out the door and left, and he hasn't been back.
But if a person shows up,
Does that show intent? Does that show intent?
And I think, unfortunately, you're making my case for it. A person showing up at the meeting, ladies and gentlemen, of this council, I personally believe constitutes making the meeting. And I think before this gets, I think there's some, I'll just say it up front, I do believe there's some personal issues involved here. I personally believe that. I've heard comments made at meetings. I'm not excusing Councilmember Robbins not coming, but something as important as this, we didn't even, and I, as a council member, Mr. Gray, I think you will support what I'm about to say. I have personally asked multiple times, have we, and please don't anybody say we, well, it's not our responsibility to reach out. Yeah, it is a little bit of professionalism, decorum, and common respect. And so let's try to keep our tempers down and look at this, and come on, folks. I do believe, I'll just say it up front, I'm sorry, I believe there's some personal feelings in this. And again, I'm not condoning any council member. We have an inherent responsibility elected by the citizens to show up at these meetings. But it seems like we're picking and choosing what actions we take with regards to things. So all I'm saying is, even after my specific request, we still haven't contacted Councilmember Robbins. And as far as him leaving during a meeting, I believe there were some situations with that. And that has no bearing on this, folks. He came to the meeting. He came to the meeting. So let's...
Mr. Mayor, if I might, as the only former council member that has been tried to remove, not making a meeting. It was tried twice while I was mayor of the city of Ingleside, and it takes a council action. We as individuals may not arbitrarily remove someone from the council. It's a council action. Council sequesters, council removes. And so it's a council action. It's not an arbitrary by any one person or any 2 persons or 3 persons. It will take 4 of them to remove him. And to me, it should be a super majority. Because there's a lot of times, mine was, is when I was foreign. I happened to be in another country, a communist country, couldn't get out, couldn't call. But it was tried and people knew where I was at. But at that time, to me, it was a vendetta. But there were some good people on that council that said, this is wrong, the man was working. I don't know if he's working or not, it really doesn't matter to me. Gentlemen, the actions that we seem to be taking today and what we're doing today is embarrassment to this city, and I'd ask that you rethink what you're doing. Thank you.
I disagree because it's not what the charter says. And we can't arbitrarily change the charter.
Well, Mayor, if I may, while I certainly do not condone him missing the meetings by any means, I think it is each and every council member here tonight's responsibility to have reached out to that council member and possibly said, why haven't you been coming? Are you coming back? So in my opinion, we are all as guilty, not just the office of the city manager's office, but each and every one of us for not reaching out and saying, are you coming back or not?
I would like to ask the city attorney at this time to tell us what latitude the council in fact has on this situation, please.
Well, your council, your charter is pretty simple. It's 3.06 of your charter, and it basically just says, if a council person misses 3 regular council meetings in succession, consecutive regular meetings, then the office is forfeited. Now, that's I researched the cases that I had time to research this afternoon, and the case that I recall is Alamo City, where they had a very similar charter, except it was 4 meetings instead of 3. The court said that this means that the forfeiture provision is automatic. What happens is, after the 3rd meeting is missed, the forfeiture automatically occurs without action by the council. I mean, tonight, I don't think your agenda says anything about action. I would assume that it doesn't. I mean, all I'm trying to tell you is that the case law would support the proposition that it's automatic and that no action is required. Now, the last few words of that same provision says, as everyone has pointed out, unless excused by the council. Now, that does not say that the excuse has to be given in advance. If, for example, someone was busy at work, the person could call on the phone and tell you, I'm not going to be here. If the person was in a car wreck, but not rendered comatose, that person might pick up the phone, or someone near his bed at the hospital and call and say, I am not going to be there, and here is the reason. They might do an email. There may also be circumstances, however, where that person is simply incapable of calling for those 3 days. No one knows he's injured. No one knows he's comatose, and he cannot call ahead of time. So he cannot inform anyone that he has an excuse and that he's not going to be there for some good reason. In that case, you would be looking to a situation where it would be only after the 3rd meeting that an excuse could even be sought. You know, the court says that the forfeiture is automatic, whether the council does anything or not. But if if a person came to you and was able to show you circumstances precluding him from seeking an excuse or a hearing on the excuse, then there might be a reason for you to want to hear that excuse or those excuses. But it would be general rule is it's up to the person who is seeking that hearing to request it. If the person, again, is capable of requesting it, then one would expect that he would do so. Tonight there's no action, but 2 people on the council can put something on the agenda. So you could request, 2 could request, obviously, that this be put on an agenda to determine whether or not there is any excuse that should be heard. I mean, it would make a farce of the provision of the charter if you simply said, well, he's excused because I just think I want him to be back on the council because for some reason other than the circumstances that resulted in his absence and his inability to seek, to tell people that he was going to be absent. So you could make a farce of the provision if you so desired, but there would be circumstances where it could legitimately be said, I couldn't come to you and seek an excuse because I was unable. I could not do so in advance. I was unable to tell you I was going to be absent. I don't know if that has happened here. I don't know the facts surrounding this man's absence for the last 3 regular meetings. But you can put something on the agenda. Any 2 councilmen can do that and have it heard. Yes.
So, according to the provision 3.06 B3, where everything is there, as you just stated, are you telling us that you can discuss it all night long, but it is not an action item, it's not going to anything
tonight? No, not at all.
Then why are we belaboring this and not moving on?
Good question.
We cannot do anything. We are all looking at one another. We are trying to point fingers at one another as to who should have done what. We cannot remove the gentleman from the council at this point without it being an agenda item. So if that was the request from the other council members, then that is what should happen. It should go forward and we should move past this. Now.
Actually, but Councilman Robbins, he missed 3 meetings. He has forfeited his office and he's no longer in office now. That's subject to your charter saying unless excuse for, like I said, there may be excuses that a court would say, okay, he can come in later, but it would be, I would think, a very unusual situation. Now, even if a fellow's absent for 2 meetings, and then he's going to be absent for the 3rd, I mean, you would think that at one of those meetings he could have said, well, I want to let you know I have an excuse, I'd like the council to hear it. But there's nothing in there saying in your charter he cannot come back later and offer an excuse that you could hear. I haven't researched further to see whether or not there would be something that you could do. All I know is that tonight, it's an automatic thing. The thing is forfeited, and if you want to hear it again, you can hear excuses, you could go ahead and do it. If he doesn't ask for it, then there's no compulsion on the part of the council to hear it. But any two of you can put it on there if you so desire.
Not to belabor, I just want to clarify something, that no matter what happens tonight, period, what you're telling this council is he has forfeited his office. Is that?
Your charter says that. It says he has forfeited his office. It's exactly like the language in that Alamo City case.
So action doesn't have to be taken.
No,
That's what
you're
I
not
was
taking,
asking.
that's why it's just consideration. It's just consideration of what's happened. It's like recognizing that a storm came through town. A storm came through town. We didn't take any action to make the storm come through or make it go away. We're just recognizing that it happened. And that's okay. You can do that under the items you have.
I mean, I'm with Cindy. I mean, we can't take no action on this. We just need to move forward. The thing about it, we got 3 meetings left before this new election's coming up. He's like our attorney has said, he's forfeited. This is the 4th meeting he hasn't been here. I'm not saying that I'm against it, or I'm not saying I'm for it, but we got to move on. I mean, this is something we can't even do nothing. The thing about it is, there's 3 meetings left. You know, let's just finish. I mean, he's already forfeited. The city attorney has already stated that.
I think in the department right now would almost be another farce too. This being this close to the election anyway.
Well, that part takes council action, because it says the council shall take action to
Yeah.
appoint somebody.
So let me ask this clarification question. Without being excused by the city council, that's what I keep focusing on. So what are the means by which a city council can excuse an absence? How does that happen? And how has it happened in the past?
Just like when you call in and say you're not going to be here.
I don't know that the council, until the 3rd meeting is missed, would be called upon to determine whether or not an excuse exists that would allow and excuse those 3 absences. So until a 3rd consecutive meeting is missed, you wouldn't have any occasion to ever be called upon to make a decision. Now, if a 3rd meeting is missed and then the manager said, well, look, he called me the last meeting and he said blah, blah, blah. And I think it's a good excuse. Or instead, he didn't opine at all. He just says he was in a car wreck and he missed it. And the council could look back and say, you know, if he was in a car wreck, that's an excuse for the last meeting. That means he hadn't missed 3 in a row. It's been unexcused. He's missed 1. The one immediately preceding was excused. I mean, we can think of all kinds of facts, but nothing's going to change the automatic nature of the forfeiture under the law tonight.
And you're also saying, I guess, that if a council member has 3 consecutive absences, then I think you mentioned earlier, it's incumbent upon them, that person, to come forward and say, hey, I recognize that I missed 3 consecutive council meetings, and here's the reason why, and I asked for the excuse.
Sure. If I care enough to have a hearing on my excuse, I want to present it and stay in office, it is incumbent upon me to tell someone I wish to assert my right to a hearing. I feel I have a right to a hearing to determine whether or not one of my excuses is good enough to remove me from that forfeiture provision, one or all. So, I mean, it's like any other right you want to assert. You've got to assert it and say, I have this right, I want to take advantage of it.
And if a council member, like the mayor said, if a council member calls in and gives a reason, it would take another council member, I guess, to at some point during the meeting to say, hey, I object, Steve Deal is not here, and
No,
I don't think he
otherwise you'd be dealing with that kind of issue every time a councilman was absent, each and every meeting. No, that's not what the charter contemplates. It's only after a 3rd absence. And you may not know he's going to be absent that 3rd meeting. It's only after that occurs that you're going to know, for the most part, if he's just extricated himself from the entire process and said, I don't want to be involved in this anymore. But like I say, I mean, there could possibly be circumstances that could excuse it. I'm not saying you can't have a hearing on it. You can put anything you want on the agenda too, however you can do it, and it'll be on there. But right tonight, all you're doing is recognizing the fact that it's forfeited, and that's because the people passed the charter provision saying we have an interest in having council members who are present at the meetings consistently, and they decided that 3 meetings in a row was enough. They don't want somebody who's not going to be serving for those 3 meetings. So all you're doing is simply recognizing the charter and enforcing it.
And I believe that before you notify him by letter that he's forfeited his position, if he has an excuse, he'll come forward.
Well, you could do that. I mean, there's nothing in the charter saying that you have to, but certainly, I mean, the staff could say, charter says this, you were absent 3 meetings. If you wish to have a hearing, tell us.
And so if he came forward at that time, we heard what he had to say, and we realized that whatever.
You could perhaps hear it. We don't have a whole lot of precedent for this, so I can't reach back and say this is exactly what type of circumstances that might present a valid excuse. You want to be careful when you enforce the charter, though, because you don't want to make a sham of it and say, well, any excuse is a good excuse. I got a splinter in the bottom of my foot and I couldn't come. I was late for supper, so I didn't bother to come. Those are not excuses, in my opinion. But obviously the council can do what it wants to. It can accept the excuse, and there's nothing. Some voter out there may say you're not enforcing our charter. On the other hand, the voters may say it doesn't matter because the election's coming up anyway, we don't care. But I don't think that would be enforcement. Whereas there could be, as I said, circumstances that might excuse it. They would be probably few and far between.
Other discussion?
Lisa, one of the things you brought up, Mayor, that we were talking about maybe having, we might talk about this, I guess, at some other point, but I'll mention it now. Appointing someone, I would not be in favor of that, and I would not support that being so close to the election. I mean, it's not necessary. Additionally, that would probably create some burden on the staff from my somewhat unique perspective.
Well, we can consider that in the next meeting under an item and decide whether we want. Once again, you got to read this thing very carefully because it says that the council shall, but then it gives you a whole bunch of what ifs in here. Within 60 days, if